Alan Nays, hey, how you doing?
Good, man. How's it going?
It's going great, going
Good.
great. Hey, everybody, just wanted to introduce Alan Nays here. We're doing our first podcast, and a podcast that's soon to be named. It's designed for hopefully for tradesmen who own their own business and are growing their own business and are looking to make smart financial and tax decisions. Um, I am a certified financial planner. Been a financial planner for 16 years. Um, own a practice in Minnesota. And Alan is a CPA. He's been a practicing accountant for 20 years. He's a certified tax coach and is in Missouri. Uh, and we are collaborative. We work together on lots of different things. And we wanted to come together to kind of provide some value for folks in the trades that are growing their business. Alan, how to do it on your that intro there?
No, that sounds good. I think you
Great,
covered all
great.
bases.
Good. Yeah, and for any of the listeners out there, this is what I would just say is you're talking to two guys that are very competent in this stuff. We both have different accolades and things, and I don't say this braggadociously, but Forbes has recognized me as a best in state in Minnesota next generation advisor, and Alan has owned a business prior to being a CPA outside of the accounting world that he bought, scaled, and then sold, right, Alan? And maybe you want to just tell us a little bit about that
Yeah.
and kind of your
Yeah.
experience there.
Outside of the accounting profession, and I jumped back into accounting, and a lot of other accountants think I'm crazy for that. But, I think it was great experience, and it gave me the unique perspective. Because what I quickly realized when I actually started making money is that, as a trained accountant, we learned how to file people's taxes and follow all the rules and dot the I's, cross the T's. But I didn't have any formal training or experience in how to reduce tax liability, which is what really matters, in my opinion. It was a unique experience. It was a good experience.
You mean as a business owner, you're not just concerned about crossing the T's and dotting the I's, you're actually concerned about reducing tax liability? No way.
It's all about that cash in the bank. That's what we're concerned about.
Yeah, and I think, in my business too, so much of it's compliance. I went to school for this. I know you did too. The real world is just different. And what I think I'm most excited about getting together with you on a regular basis and talking about this stuff is you and I are aware of some of these strategies that really any business owner and anyone with some organization and the right people helping them can employ that most people just are not aware of. They're just
Yeah.
not aware of. And the tax code is set up in such a way where, as long as you do certain things correctly and deploy capital and build your business in the way that the tax code says to do it, there's tons of opportunities. And it's one of the things I'm most excited about getting together on this on a regular basis.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So what we had planned here for our first session is just kind of doing a high level overview of three core things that we think are really important for any business owner, especially tradesmen. And I want to just kind of circle back to that before I go over these three things and just say another reason why we've kind of put this together is that we found that talking to folks in trades, so many of them have successful businesses, they're profitable businesses, but so many times they're not structured and organized in a way where they're optimizing all the different tax and financial opportunities that they have. And so we wanted to put this together specifically for that group of folks, um, to hopefully open their eyes up to some ways that they can be taking advantage of these things, and really get that information into their hands, because we see it so often where they're not taking advantage of that. So really, the first thing, Alan, I'm gonna give this over to you because this is definitely your wheelhouse. Is the first thing is planning to minimize taxes as you're growing your business. That's the first thing. I'm gonna give this over to Alan right after I get through all three of these. The second thing, the second core thing that any business owner, really, certainly any tradesman that owns a business, is to plan and build wealth and accomplish your goals. So, you have to have a plan for these things, right? And the more we can project out into the future, right? What our plans are, even knowing that they're going to change along the way. What are those things you want to accomplish? What are the things that you want out of your life? What do you want out of your business? Put plans down and start working towards them, and how are we progressing towards them? And then the last thing is planning to leave a legacy. So not enough people do this. In fact, we're going to get into the details of this in later on in the show. Um, but when we talk about that, what do you want to have? If the worst were to happen to you, or if you live a long life and you pass away, how and who and how do you get those assets to the people that you care about or the organizations you care about in the most tax efficient way as possible, right? These are the three core things. We're going to be kind of talking about them at a high level in today's podcast. And in future podcasts, the next three, we're going to do a deep dive into each one of those. So Alan, tell me. I mean, so plan to minimize taxes. This is the when we got this one at the very top. I know I was arguing with you. Should we put this or building wealth? But man, I can agree as the financial person in here in the room. Taxes, everything spins around taxes. You got to have your taxes under control.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I like to say the tax tail shouldn't wag the dog, but it really does have a major impact on decisions that are being made. Are you going to purchase a truck? Do you want to take the depreciation this year, or should I hire an employee? It affects a lot of decisions that are made. And one benefit I have is we work with a lot of businesses and we get to see what the successful operators do, and they really have these three core areas dialed in, and when they do, things start to function more efficiently and more importantly more profitable. And the tax strategy is I think probably the most important one, because it can have the greatest impact on your finances. And so you really need a formal plan and how you're going to handle them. And really, we have five key areas that we focus on. I don't want to go in specifically in these areas. We don't have enough time on the call, and it's so context sensitive for the client. I don't think it's a great use of time. But the five key areas are, retirement planning, income shifting, optimizing your deductions, entity structuring, and then looking for those tax loopholes and tax credits to reduce the liability.
Alan, tell me this. Tell me when you sit down with I know you've got some clients that are HVAC, some of the trades. When you sit down with folks, they've got a successful business. They've got great revenues, even some nice profitability. Give me like some things that are just like, these are like things that they got to hammer out that you see often enough that people are not doing, that are kind of some softballs that people can be looking out for, things they should be thinking about.
I would say entity structure is probably one of the biggest misses, and it can have the biggest impact on how you're taxed. Depending on your entity structure, whether you're an LLC, an S corp, C corp, partnership, that has probably the biggest area where you can save taxes. And then aside from that and it depends on the business, but there are a lot of ways to optimize your deductions and take advantage of your deductions. Examples would be like hiring your kids, and other ways to pay for higher education. There's also loopholes and credits that seems to interest the people the most. They get most interested about tax loopholes and credits, and there are some obscure tax credits out there that unless you do the work to dig it out from the client, they might miss.
Right. Yeah, that'll have to be something we dive, maybe in the next one we dive into. I'd love to. I know there's a combination planning between what you're talking about with the tax planning, like paying your children to work for you.
Right.
It's a very unique part of the tax code. You
Yeah.
couple that with some financial planning strategies. I mean, if you care about your kids retiring, you can couple that with Roth IRAs for your kids and create a ton of tax-free everything, no taxes for anyone. And that's all I'll say on that.
Yeah,
But
and there's
Alan,
there's
let's see what
also
something.
there's also a right way and a wrong way to pay your kids too. And depending on the client situation, it sounds straightforward. Well, I'll just put the kids on the payroll, but there are a couple different ways to do it, and some are better than others. So
Yeah. And Alan, forgive me for interrupting. Where are we at for time here? Do we know? We got a counter on here?
we're 10 minutes.
10 minutes. All right, good deal. Um, but that's perfect. Yeah, I mean, the way these podcasts go, we just nuance down to rabbit holes. Like it'd be so easy for me to jump down this one. We won't do it. We won't do it for this podcast. But this is, it's probably for the folks that are listening to this. Alan and I get excited about this stuff because we know that it can make material impacts on people's lives. Right. At the end of the day, these dollars can be sucked away from the IRS or wherever else and applied to things that actually matter, like hiring another employee, investing in some equipment, saving for retirement, saving for your kids' education. Maybe you want to send them on to trade school or something else, right? Anything else. And sometimes it feels like a lot of gobbledygook when I go to the doctor, which I don't do enough. I get homework assignments, and I'll literally they'll be explaining something to me, and I'll literally ask my doctor, Doctor Smith, you need to redo that, and you need to explain that to me like I'm a 13-year-old because I don't know what you're talking about. And so I know, Alan, I'll speak for you on this. We want this to be something where people can come to understand concepts that maybe are complex and sometimes overwhelming. We want people to be able to come listen to what we're talking about and get something from it that's actually tangible and meaningful and not just a bunch of gobbledygook, right?
Right.
Um, so yeah, I don't know if you want to, if anything else that you want to talk about, on having the importance of having that plan to minimize taxes, Alan.
No, I think that's a good introductory to it. There's so much we can discuss on that topic that I think we could spend the uh, entire podcast doing it.
Yeah, we
And,
definitely could.
so,
A lifetime of podcasts,
right.
Have you seen the tax code? We should print that off and have it one of these days. I'm not paying for it though. The printer costs. Um, all right, number two core thing here. We got plan to build wealth and accomplish goals. All right, so this is obviously a very wide-ranging thing. Some people may think, well, what does this mean? Well, this is what it means. It means actually having a, call it, financial plan, business plan, where you are really thoroughly thinking about what it is that you actually want, right? Um, Somebody who's that I follow that I really really enjoy, Jordan Peterson, who a lot of people may know, talks about this constantly. You need to have an aim in life, right? You need to have an aim in anything that you do, and sometimes we don't hit what we're aiming at, right? But we need to have an aim, and what this means is putting together a plan, and you work that. You maybe have short-term goals, which might be even 1 year, then medium range goal, 3, 5 years, longer term goals. And the more that you can plan out what you want out of the future, it's going to impact your planning today on how to effectively save on taxes and maximize your financial wealth in the future, right? We're not going to bounce back to the tax conversation in this call, but Alan will tell you all day long. You give him enough of a runway on when you're planning on selling your business. If you're in that stage of life where you're towards the end of your career versus the beginning, there's a lot he can do from a tax perspective. Versus if you call him up and say, "Hey, I'm selling my business in 6 months." Am I right, Alan?
Yeah, yeah. It's hard to plan for anything at that point.
Right.
Or hey, I've executed the sales agreement on my business, and I'm gonna have some
Yeah,
capital
we see
gains. What
that
do we
too.
do?
Yeah, the sale's already done, and they're calling out and reaching out to a professional, right?
Yeah,
So, it's very, very important. And sometimes people will say to me, "Well, but Matt, I don't know what I want in 10 years." And that's fair. Yeah, that's a really fair thing. But we should be at least aiming and looking towards that, knowing full well that we're going to pivot, right? We're going to shift and go different directions. But by planning that out, it allows us to be so much more strategic on the front end, not just with tax planning, but financial planning, business planning. You know, um, depending on where you're at in life, I've been in business for 11 years now, and I've been in situations where business is growing too fast. I mean, Alan, I don't know if you can relate to this, where you don't have capacity with staff and other people.
Yep.
And while that's exciting, that's an exciting thing to be in. It's also terrifying. If we can avoid that and have a plan in place to be filling in that capacity as we're growing, that's a much, much better experience. So there's a good way to do this. There's a better way to do this than not. And this is what we're talking about. It's about planning, the short term planning, and then even the middle range planning and the long term planning. Where are we headed? Right? What are we working so hard for in our businesses? What are we doing this for? I can tell you, for me, it's my family. I want to grow a business to have a legacy, hopefully retire someday. I mean, whatever that means. I don't know if I'll ever retire. Like, right? I guarantee Alan agrees with me.
Yeah.
Um, always be dabbling in something, but that's the idea here. Is let's keep, let's figure out what we want and aim towards that and go accomplish it. Right? Alan, I don't know if you have anything you want to add there.
No, I think you set that up perfect. You hit the target you're aiming at. So, it's better to be proactive and start thinking about it now, even if you can't fully execute now, but you got your plan in place and you're working towards it. I can't think of something that's more important than that.
Mhm. Yeah, and if you think about where you were, I mean, think about yourself, where you were at 3 years ago, 5 years ago. Um, it's amazing how things change, and we want to make sure that we're planning for that next step, and we're continuing to grow. I think as business owners and entrepreneurs, um, we're always looking for the next way to grow, right? And I hopefully the folks that are listening to this are looking for that as well. And there's ways to do that in an organized way that's much more manageable, and efficient from a tax perspective and a financial perspective, right? Um, good. All right. So the last thing we wanted to touch on, and I'm gonna kick this over to you, is what I mean. Planning to leave a legacy. I know that's not something that I'm 40. Alan, are you 42? 40?
I'll be 41 in August. Yeah.
41 in August. All right. I didn't. I forget that you're a little older than I am. I'll be 41 in February.
Thanks for telling everyone that too, by the way.
Yeah, right. Uh, so leaving a legacy. This is sometimes called estate planning. All right. Sometimes called end of life planning, which people think, oh, I don't need to worry about that. I'm 40. Or if you're 30 years old and you got a business, I don't need to worry about that. Yeah, you do. You do. Um, and you need to be thinking about it at the very least for now. If you're not married, have no kids, maybe it's a little less important. Um, but you still need to be thinking about it because it has huge impacts tax wise. If you're trying to grow your wealth, it has huge impacts. Alan, give me your thoughts on that, on this topic.
Well, I've seen it happen a few times where people don't have a proper plan in place, and the unfortunate happens, and their estate goes to probate, and it's an absolute nightmare when that happens, and it certainly exposes them to the court system and all the vultures that come with it. So having an estate plan, it's a way to protect your family when you're not necessarily around to do it. So I think it's vastly important that people form some sort
Yeah,
of plan.
yeah. Protect your family, but also just minimize taxes.
Right.
Because that's a when someone passes away and you haven't done this kind of planning, it can trigger all sorts of tax bombs,
Right.
right? Um, so absolutely, estate planning. You need to plan for that. You build a wonderful business. You kick the bucket, you know, um, in an unsuspecting way too early. You could be leaving a tax bomb to your family, right? You want to have these things in order. This is what you want to have these things in order, um, and just be able to do this as efficiently as possible, right?
Right.
Um, just on a side note, I'm gonna go on a little tangent here to talk about some of the stuff that we see all the time, and I would say we see this all the time from smart people that are running $1 million businesses, and we'll be doing a simple beneficiary review, and they haven't looked at it for 5 to 10 years, and I'll be sitting down with a younger couple, but they've got a successful business. We're looking at one of their investment accounts, and I'm like, "Hey, Bob, I can see your investment statement has your mom listed as the beneficiary still, right?" And this happens all of the time where people don't pay attention to that kind of stuff. And you know, Bob's wife is not. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it shouldn't be my mom. Maybe I've run it into where sometimes the mom's deceased. She's no longer even alive. Doesn't make any sense. Um, and you can imagine, it's a huge problem.
Yep.
If you pass away and your beneficiaries are incorrect, there's no going back and changing that.
Oh,
That money
so,
goes
so
to whoever
important.
is listed there.
Yeah, so important, especially if you have a family.
Yeah.
I have a new client that has a business worth 5 to 7 million, and probably accumulated another couple million in cash, and they don't have one yet. So we're running through the tax planning process with them, and it's high on the list.
Yeah. Yep. And the last thing I'll just say on this, and then we'll do a deeper dive into it in a future episode. But if you have children, and you come into our office and ask us, all right, we need to do all these things, taxes, financial planning. If you have children and don't have a will yet, that's our first order of business. You
Yep.
need a will. A will is a document. People think of it as, oh, my will, I'm going to leave all this money to these different people. That's not the concern at this point. You need to leave guardianship. If you and your spouse were to pass away, who do you want to raise your children, right?
Yeah.
And the reality is, if you don't do that, a court is going to be deciding it. I don't care if you got godparents, you took them to
Yeah.
church, you did the whole, ritual and everything. Courts don't care about that.
They say everyone has an estate plan. If you don't have a formal one, the court will make one for you.
Yeah, yeah. It's called intestate laws, and they're
Yeah.
not. You're gonna have a judge. Imagine this: you don't list that. You got one grandma. I got kids.
Yeah.
Both of their grandmas absolutely love them, which I'm really glad they do. But heaven forbid if my wife Emily and I, if we passed away and we didn't have a will, which we do. But if we did, you can bet they'd be going to court and they'd be fighting about, oh, I'm better for the kids. No, I'm better, right?
Yeah.
Or that conceivably could happen, and they're well-meaning, right? Um, the point is it's just really an important thing to take the time to really draw that out, because you don't want a court deciding what's going to happen to your children, right?
Absolutely.
Um, so, um, Alan, anything else on that? Leaving a legacy, planning to leave a legacy.
No, I think that's a great introduction to the topic. We go into a deeper dive on it on our in a future podcast, because it is important, and it is something we got to be taking a look at.
Yeah. And if for anybody listening, the reality is as we go forward, our next episode will be really diving into that tax plan, right? How to plan for minimizing taxes, and I'll be leading a lot of that, and I'll be providing my 2 cents on things. Um, Everything that we talk about in this podcast is going to string back to these three core things, generally speaking. Um, and it's because there's going to be nuances that drip off of all of these things. They're going to tie back largely to these things. And we'll point that out when we're doing that. But we're going to try to bring valuable stuff that people can actually implement and utilize in their business, that will save on taxes, and then also put them into a better financial situation, whether it's tax savings or other financial strategies. And hopefully we can do that in a way that's understandable, and it's something you can actually take and run with and apply. All right. Um, Alan, is there anything else that you wanted to cover here today?
No, I think we nailed it today.
Yeah, we totally nailed it. Um, all right. Well, hey, until we see you guys next time, have a great week. We're planning on doing these weekly, right, Alan?
Weekly. I know we have some vacations coming up, so
Yeah,
there
we got
might
some
be some.
vacations. It's summer,
Yeah,
right? Everybody
kids are out of
understands that.
school.
But
Yeah.
yeah, we're going to try to get these out on a weekly basis, and we'll appreciate any sort of feedback. And just know that um, if you do have people in the trades that would value this kind of information, we're never going to have advertising on our podcast. nobody ever pay to advertise on it at this point. But we're gonna get big enough, and when they do, we're not gonna have advertising. So do us a favor and just share this with somebody you think that would appreciate it.
Yeah,
There'll be more good content to come. All right.
perfect.
All right.
All right,
Thanks all.
Matt.
Yeah. Have a
Goodbye.
good one, Al.